旅行といえば、次はどこに行きたいですか？みなさん、こんにちは。Welcome back to NihonGoal. 元気ですか？ This is part 2 of Minna No Nihongo Intermediate Lesson 15. Before we begin, make sure to check out part 1 of this lesson.
Here are the grammar points for this video. We will study のだ、ほどのものじゃありません、だけじゃなく、and といえば。
はい、準備できたら始めましょう。Our first grammar point is 何々のだ or のです or のである or のではない。This is used for emphasis or clarification or to sum up what you are saying. This can be translated to the thing is, you see, or in other words. In everyday conversation, this pattern is shortened to des, which we've studied before. This can be combined with phrases like tsumari or iikaereba. We can use this pattern with verbs, e-adjectives, na-adjectives, and nouns. For verbs and e-adjectives, we simply add nani-nani, no da or no des, and so on. But for na-adjectives and nouns, we need to add na. So it becomes na no da, na no des, na no de aru, and so on. So let's take a look at some examples on how to use this pattern.
For example, she's been busy lately. It's because she's studying for exams at school. Here we have the verb studying for exams. We say, 彼女は最近忙しい. She's been busy lately. And the reason is, 学校で試験勉強している. So the plain form of しています plus のだ. It's because she's studying for exams at school. 彼女は最近忙しい. 学校で試験勉強しているのだ. Another example, it's not that I don't want to see the movie. Horror movies only make me nervous. We say, その映画を We say, I don't want to see. 見たくない plus のではない So we are saying, it's not that I don't want to see. Followed by ホラー映画は緊張するだけだ。その映画を見たくないのではない。ホラー映画は緊張するだけだ。Another example is using an e-adjective. You see, it's cold today, so you'll need a coat. We say, 今日は Our e-adjective is cold or 寒い. We just add のだ。今日は寒いのだ。You see, it's cold today. つまり、コートが必要だ。Another example is using a na-adjective. For now, we need to add na. For example, the thing is, she's a beauty. That's why she's very popular. 彼女は美人 a beauty 美人な plus のです We can use のだ or のです。彼女は美人なのです or 美人なのだ。だから That's why 彼女はとても人気がある。彼女は美人なのです。だから彼女はとても人気がある。Next is using a noun. Again, for nouns, we need to add na also. For example, you see, it is a limited edition book. So be sure to return it when you're done reading. We say, それは A limited edition book is 限定版の本 Limited edition book 限定版の本なのである So it's just the polite form of のだ or のです。のである。それは限定版の本なのである。読み終わったら必ず返してください。それは限定版の本なのである。 読み終わったら必ず返してください。
Our next grammar point is 何々ほどのものじゃありません。This pattern is like saying it's not a big deal as you think it is, or something doesn't extend as far as something. It helps you keep things in perspective by comparing them to something else. This pattern is especially good for humbling overreaction or clarifying that something is not as to the extent as what someone think it is. In everyday conversation, this becomes ほどものじゃない or ほどもんじゃない. We can use ほどのものじゃありません with verbs and nouns. For verbs, we attach this to the plain form of the verb, followed by ほどのもの or ほどのことじゃありません. For nouns, we need to add という or て after the noun, followed by ほどのもの or ほどのことじゃありません. So let's take a look at some examples on how to use this pattern.
For example, I don't think his lateness is something to get upset about particularly. There might be some special reason. So the speaker is saying that you don't have to make it a big deal. We say, 彼の遅刻は his lateness. 遅刻 is lateness. 彼の遅刻は別に起こる particularly or specifically to get upset. 別に起こるほどのことではない to the extent that you have to be upset about it. So ほどのこと彼の遅刻は別に起こるほどのことではないと思う I think okay? 彼の遅刻は別に起こるほどのことではないと思うなんか特別な理由があるかもしれません Another example, this movie had good reviews, but for me it wasn't too special. この映画は評判が良かったけれど、評判 means reviews, good reviews. It has good reviews, but it's not to the extent that it is extraordinary or special for the speaker. We say, 私にとっては for me, 特別すぎる。特別すぎる means to be overly special. Then we add ほどのものじゃありませんでした。It wasn't too special or it wasn't as special or a big of a deal for me. 私にとっては特別すぎるほどものじゃありませんでした。Next example. This problem is not as unsolvable as you think. We say, この問題は this problem followed by 解けない unsolvable plus ほどのものではありません。この問題は解けないほどのものではありません。Next is using a noun. For nouns, we need to add という or て before we add ほどのものじゃありません or ほどのことじゃありません。For example, have you had breakfast? 朝食は食べましたか？朝食は食べましたか？ Well, you couldn't really call it breakfast, but I had a banana. So, the speaker is saying a banana is not really considered a breakfast, right? So, we say 朝食 breakfast 朝食という or て plus ほどのものじゃないですけど So, but バナナを食べました I wouldn't call it breakfast, but I had a banana朝食というほどのものじゃないですけど、バナナを食べました。Another example is using an adjective. For adjectives, we also need to put という or て before. For example, this problem is not as easy as it may seem. In fact, it's a bit challenging. So we have the adjective easy. We say, この問題は followed by 簡単. Our adjective is easy or 簡単 plus というほどのものではありません。実は少し難しいです。この問題は簡単というほどものではありません。Which means this is something that you could really call as easy. It's actually a bit challenging.
Our next grammar point is 何々だけじゃなく or だけでなく or だけではなく. This pattern is all about saying not only this but also that. For everyday conversation, we use だけじゃなく. But for more formal or written context, we use だけでなく or だけではなく. We can use additional words such as mo or made or other words in conjunction with 何々だけじゃなく. So let's take a look at some examples on how to use this pattern.
For example, this robot not only cooks but also cleans. We say, このロボットは Our verb is to cook, 料理する. So the dictionary form of to cook or 料理をします is 料理をする or 料理する followed by だけじゃなく. So this robot not only cooks, 掃除もする also cleans. このロボットは料理するだけじゃなく掃除もする. Another example is using an E adjective. This cake is not only delicious but also cheap. We say, このケーキは delicious is おいしい。おいしいだけじゃなく but also cheap. 安い。このケーキはおいしいだけじゃなく安い。Next is using a na adjective. For na adjectives, we need to add na before だけじゃなく. We say, this restaurant is not only quiet but also clean. We say, このレストランは quiet is 静か plus な静かなだけじゃなく but also clean きれいだ。このレストランは静かなだけじゃなくきれいだ。Another example, Mr. Tanaka can speak not only English but also Chinese. We say, 田中さんは Our noun is English. 英語だけじゃなく中国語も話せる。田中さんは英語だけじゃなく中国語も話せる。
Our last grammar pattern is 何々といえば. This pattern is used to introduce a topic or provide additional information about something that has been previously mentioned. This is very similar to the pattern 何々というと, which is generally used when you want to narrow down into detail about something that already has been mentioned. For example, お寿司というと, when you say sushi, まずはマグロが思い浮かぶ. The first thing that comes to mind is tuna. This pattern can be used with nouns or verbs. For nouns, we simply add といえば after the noun. For verbs, we use the verb in dictionary form followed by といえば. So let's take a look at some examples on how to use this pattern.
For example, speaking of sushi, a new store just opened recently. So the people talking already mentioned sushi in their conversation. And so the person is just adding information. Speaking of sushi, a new store just opened recently. We say, 寿司 plus といえば. Speaking of sushi, 最近新しい店が開店したんだ. 寿司といえば最近新しい店が開店したんだ。Another example. When it comes to education, what do you think about Japan's education system? We say education is 教育。教育といえば日本の教育制度はどう思いますか？教育といえば日本の教育制度はどう思いますか？ Another example. Speaking of travel, where would you like to go next? Travel is 旅行。旅行といえば次はどこに行きたいですか？旅行といえば次はどこに行きたいですか？ And last example, speaking of exercise, how about tennis? Exercise is 運動 or we can say to exercise 運動する So we use the dictionary form 運動します becomes 運動する plus といえば How about tennis? テニスはどうですか？
はい、お疲れ様でした。今日のレッスンはどうでしたか？役に立ったら LIKE ボタンを押してください。もしコメントとか質問があればぜひ下に書いてくださいね。I hope you learned something today. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out any of the future lessons. If you want to support this channel even more, please consider becoming my Patreon through my Patreon page where you can get the lesson PDF and other study materials. And to all my Patreons, 本当にありがとうございます。Thank you so much for your continued support. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. I will see you in the next one. またね! A big shout out to our elite scholars, Maiku, Cornelius, Constantine, Sergio, Mark, Addie, and Caroline. And to our study buddies, Paul, Paris, Jean, Firas, Manikantan, Cryptocrator, Silent, Aishwarya, and CSG Nando. And to all our NihonGoal students, 本当にありがとうございます。